All right, keep on coming in, guys. We'll just give another minute and then we'll. One more minute here, guys, and then we will get started here. Okay, and all right, let me just get my chat started here. Okay, just a quick message. Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to get started. So a couple of things just to remind you about. The first thing is I sent everyone an email with a calendar link. This is to help you guys so you can try to keep your stuff a little bit organized. So what I would like to do is just show you that calendar link, okay? Because you have to link to the calendar on a desktop and then you can look at your calendar through your phone. So we were playing with this a bit this weekend to see if this would work. Okay, so first thing I want to do is just show you your Google Calendar. So I'm going to open that up. All right. So this is what your Google Calendar looks like. So with that link, that'll take you to a Google Calendar, but that'll be right on your, you'll have to do this on your desktop. And then you'll get this window that opens, and the window is going to say accept the calendar or something like that, and you're going to say yes. And then once you accept that calendar, if you look, I'm just going to scroll down my page here. If you look at, just going to highlight this. If you look over on the left side, you see a list of all of your calendars, okay? And on that left side, you can scroll that down. So I have a whole lot of different calendars. So let's say that I only wanted to look at the calendar for you guys, okay? So that's my calendar for you. Now, as soon as you click on these are the calendars that are going to be open for, that'll be open on your phone. So then when you go to Google Calendar on your phone, you'll see whatever calendars that you've clicked on. So if the only calendar you care about is for this class, then you would click on that. And then you can see that. So now let's just go to the calendar. Okay, so let's look at today. So I'm going to click on number 6. Okay, and we can see all the stuff that's happening for your class. So your heart quiz opened at 8:30. Well, if I click on the heart quiz, I have a link that's going to take me directly to the quiz. Okay, and that link, you're going to get to the Moodle screen. You'll have to put in your username and password like you have before, but that takes you right to the quiz, which I probably have forgotten to unlock. Whoops, I will do that as soon as the session's over. Okay, if we look here, so I'm going to close that. Oh, I clicked something I shouldn't have. Hold on. Let's go back to the 6th. Okay, if I click on online classes, all right, it's the link to our Zoom class. Okay, office hours will have the same link. So all the information you need to know for your class for Meds 10 is going to be right on here. And then if I look at the week, because this is pertinent to a few of you, what I have here, your last chance to complete your first aid booklets. So Thursday midnight, I'm not accepting them after that point. So some of you need to get your butts in gear. This was due March 17th. So I think I'm being pretty generous with this. And then your last chance to finish the first aid exam, I still have 40. So I have 5 of you that haven't written that exam yet. Okay. So that needs to be done. If it's not done by midnight on Friday, then you're getting a 0 for it. Okay, so you need to get these completed sooner rather than later. So if you're having difficulties, you can talk to me about it. Okay. All right, so that is where that's at. So I'm going to go out of my share here, and I'm going to share this screen. Okay, so now just want to go to my chat. All right, any questions about the calendar and how the calendar works? Okay, you can talk to me through your mic, or you can. All right, so that's just there to help you get organized. And you can certainly make up calendars for each one of your classes. What's neat about the calendar is that any due dates, so any tasks that I put into Google Classroom automatically upload into that calendar. So those automatically will get uploaded, and then I will make events as they come. So when assignments are due and that kind of thing. Or sorry, when you have quizzes, etc., those will all be entered in there as well. Okay, so that's just to help you keep yourselves organized. All right, so cardiovascular systems. So we're going to continue on with what we were talking about. This won't take us all the way till 10 o'clock because I want to give you some time today to do that heart quiz. At noon today, those of you who have not handed in the heart 2 assignment, if I don't get it by noon, you're going to get a 0. If you're having difficulty turning in with Google Classroom, you have to make sure that you're linking your new assignment to that. So that's really important. You've got to link it. On the online tools, under classwork in Google Classroom, I have a couple of videos to help guide you through that process. Okay, so you can do that. That's pretty easy to do. But if that is getting to be too difficult for you, then email your assignment to me directly. Okay, either one works. You have to save your assignment and then email it to me directly so I can mark those. All right. There was one more thing I thought I needed to add, but perhaps not. So we're going to just talk about the cardiovascular system. So we're looking at the blood vessels. We're going to look at blood specifically during Wednesday's class. So this class, I'm just going to give you a chance to do the short class and then move on to doing your quiz today. Okay, the deadline for finishing the quiz is 8:30 on Wednesday. Okay, all right. So let's just review a little bit of what we did last class. I'm just going to move my stuff around here so we can see this slideshow. All right. So we looked at the cardiovascular system, blood vessels. We make sure you know these prefixes, right? That's part of our curricular outcomes. We know these different vessels, okay? Arteries, thicker, more muscle, okay? Higher pressure blood. Veins, lower pressure blood, so they require these one-way valves in order to force the blood to go in one direction. And capillaries, teeny tiny with a single cell layer, okay? And again, this is just another image of what we looked at last class. So make sure you know the names of all of these different types of vessels. So we have artery, vein, our veins have valves, teeny tiny veins are called venules, teeny tiny arteries are called arterioles, and then capillaries is where that material exchange happens, okay? All right, arteries, thick-walled and elastic for high pressure blood, arteries away from the heart, arteries branch into arterioles, okay? Aorta is the largest artery, carries oxygenated blood to body tissue, and pulmonary arteries carry deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Still high pressure because it's leaving the heart, it's just not as high pressure. And the reason it's not as high pressure is that we want to remember that the aorta, we have the left ventricle is pumping that blood into the aorta. And remember, this has more muscle, right? The left ventricle has a lot more muscle. The pulmonary arteries, it's the right ventricle that's pumping the blood into the pulmonary arteries. And remember, and that's supposed to be an R there, remember that this is The right ventricle has less muscle. Okay, so there's going to be less pressure in the blood in the pulmonary artery. Still coming from the heart, still lots of pressure, but because there's more muscle in the left ventricle, we're going to have higher pressure in the aorta. And we likely evolved to be that way because the aorta is moving blood to every part of our body, where the pulmonary arteries are only moving blood to the lungs. Okay. All right. So I would just like you to quickly type in, when we think about the systemic circuit and the pulmonary circuit, I would like you to just type in which circuit the aorta is part of. Okay, good. So the aorta is part of our systemic circuit, and our pulmonary arteries are part of our pulmonary circuit, kind of in the name there, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. All right, so arterioles, we want to remember are smaller branches of arteries. Okay, so thinner, right? Less pressure, it's further away from the heart, but more smooth muscle because these control the sizes of our blood, the flow of our blood can be diverted, right? So an example of our blood being diverted would be when we have our fight or flight response, okay? With our fight or flight response, so that's the response if, let's say, you're almost get into a car accident, or you do, but let's say almost. You almost get into a car accident. So what we notice with that is our heart rate gets faster, our breathing rate gets faster. But part of what happens is our skin pales. And why it pales is our arterioles that are leading blood to our skin start to constrict. Because during that fight or flight response, we don't need blood to go to our skin. We need blood to go to our brain so we can think about what to do. We need blood to go to our heart so our heart can pump effectively. And we need it to go to our muscles because maybe we have to run, right? So our blood gets diverted, and that's what our arterioles help to do for us. Okay, so that's one example of how they would help us. All right, so just continuing as a quick review of what we did. So we don't have control over how our blood vessels constrict or dilate. Veins, okay, thinner. Veins merge together to form venules. Vena cava is the largest vein, carries deoxygenated blood to the heart, and the pulmonary arteries carry oxygenated blood to the heart. Okay, so those are important things you need to know. Veins, we talked about the one-way valves, and basically how blood moves through the veins is that squeezing action of the muscle, and it moves that blood up to one level of the valve, and then the muscle squeezes and moves the blood to the next level of the valve. Okay, so if we're in a horizontal position, then it's not going to really have an impact on us. But if we're vertical, we need that blood to make its way up to our heart and our brain. Okay. All right, venules we talked about. So this is where we ended up at. We ended up talking or not talking about capillaries. Okay, so let's look at our capillaries here. So capillaries, this is where material exchange actually happens. And if we look at the right-hand side of the slide here, what we see is we've got, whoops, just want to go back to my spotlight here. I'm going to go back. Can I do it this way? Yes, I can. Okay, so we can see the capillaries. We can see that the capillaries are really, really thin. Boy, my little spotlight does not want to work today. All right. We can see the capillaries are really thin, or really narrow diameter. They are so narrow that we can only fit one level. So what we're looking at here, these little balls that we see are actually red blood cells. We can see that in that cartoon up here. In a capillary, in this cartoon, we can see the capillaries are only one cell thick, so one little flat cell. And then all our little red blood cells have to travel through single file, okay? When I look down here, what I can see is they're going single file, and we can see how thin that membrane is around our capillaries. So this is where material exchange happens. So between the blood and the body cells is one point where that material exchange happens. Okay, so what do the body cells, I would like you to write down just a couple of words here. What do the body cells gain from the blood? Okay, when we have material exchange with our body cells. Okay, I see oxygen there, absolutely. Okay, so our body cells gain oxygen and our body cells gain nutrients. And one of the nutrients they gain is glucose, right? Because our body cells need glucose and they need oxygen in order to make energy. All right, so then the next site that we need to know of material exchange is between the blood and the air in our lungs, right? So we have these little balls in our lungs called alveoli, and we need that movement between our blood and the air in our lungs. So what is the air in our lungs giving to our blood? What is the air in our lungs giving to our blood? Can you write that down in the chat? Okay, so again, we have oxygen. What is the blood giving to our lungs? Yeah, the big thing that's going to our lungs during that material exchange at the lungs is carbon dioxide's coming out of the blood, going to the lungs, and then we can breathe out that carbon dioxide because carbon dioxide is a waste product of cellular respiration. Okay. So the walls of capillaries, like I said, are 1 cell thick. Okay. So that's nice. It allows for material exchange to happen. And when we think about that, okay, so again, we're thinking about this 1 cell thick, but they're not sewn together. There's little gaps or little pores, and that allows movement of materials through. So easy movement of materials, because these capillaries are kind of leaky. Okay, not everything can get in and out of capillaries, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but a lot of materials can get in and out. So our gases like our carbon dioxide and oxygen can get in and out, our nutrients can get in and out, and our waste products can get in and out because our cells have other waste besides carbon dioxide that needs to go into our blood so we can pee it out, right? For example. All right. The diameter only allows for a single red blood cell, right? So we don't have like a huge row. They have to run through single file. So our capillaries connect our arterioles and our venules together. Okay, so our blood is always traveling from arterial. So we have artery, arterial, then we have this network of capillaries, venules, veins, back to the heart. Okay, so that's always our pattern. So we start with our arteries. They branch into arterioles, which branch into our capillary network, which merge together to make venules, which merge to make veins, which is now going to take the blood back to the heart. So we want to make sure we're understanding that pattern. That's always the direction it goes, regardless if we're thinking about the pulmonary circuit or the systemic circuit. Okay. All right, so if we take a look at this image, what we have is we have got our arteriole. So this is branched off of, excuse me, an artery. And then that blood is flowing through. And then we see in this middle part here, we see this capillary network. And that capillary network is where the exchange is happening. And then the blood's going to flow. The capillaries are going to merge into venules, which are eventually going to merge into veins. And then that blood's going to go back to the heart. So looking at the different colors we see here, would this be an example of a network in a pulmonary circuit or a systemic circuit? Excellent. So this is a systemic circuit. So if I was thinking about doing an image like this in a pulmonary circuit, what would be different about the arterioles if I drew that picture in a pulmonary circuit? How would the arterioles be different? Okay, so the capillary network would be around the alveoli, but how would my drawing be different? besides that, besides having an alveoli there? What would I notice about the arterioles? Exactly. In my image, I would color the arterioles blue, and then slowly my capillaries would turn red as they're gaining oxygen from the lungs, right? The blood's going to be gaining oxygen, and then the venules would all be red because they've gained oxygen, right? So that would be the differences that I would see if I was trying to draw the same image for a pulmonary circuit, okay? All right. Okay, so if we take a look here, so normally in a class I would have you guys try to write this out, but what we have here is the vessel type, a description of the vessel, and then a function, okay? So I'd like you to come up with two different descriptions of an artery. So what would be two things that I might be able to describe, or how I could describe an artery, okay? Even if you just type in one thing. Okay, awesome. So arteries are going to be thick-walled, okay? Absolutely. Okay, so arteries are thick-walled. And then the other thing I have with an artery is that they're going to be elastic, because we have to allow for that movement, because every time our heart pumps, right, there's going to be a burst of blood that goes through, and then it's going to relax, and a burst of blood. So our arteries have to be able to handle that pump and then come back and pump and come back. So they have to be elastic. Okay, function. So quick couple of words, function of an artery. Any ideas? Yeah, biggest thing we need to remember about arteries is that they carry blood away from the heart, okay? The other thing we want to remember about arteries is that it's high pressure blood, okay? Artery blood is higher pressure and it's away from the heart. So those are really the key things that I want to remember, right? High pressure, don't know why that did that, and away from the heart. So those are our key ideas that we want to think about when we think about an artery. Okay, what are some things I could say about describing a vein? Okay, veins have valves. Absolutely. I don't want to forget about that. So veins have valves. So when I think about a vein, okay, they're thinner walled than arteries, they're less elastic, and they have one-way valves. So that's one key point to help me identify what they look like. Okay, and then when I think about what a vein does, okay, low pressure blood toward the heart. So those are some key things we want to remember, right? Low pressure blood toward the heart. Okay, so now if I was to look at a capillary, what description could I see? How would I be able to figure out that I'm looking at a capillary? Okay, capillaries are one cell thick. Okay, that's probably one of our biggest identifiers. One cell thick, little red blood cells are traveling through them in single file. Okay, so walls are one cell thick. Now, the big thing for function of capillaries, this is where material exchange happens. Diffusion of materials into and out of body cells in the lungs. Okay, so that's critical. When we talk about the lungs, we're actually talking about these little balls inside the lungs called alveoli, but that's not really part of this course to learn that. So those of you who took Bio 20, that you know about alveoli, but we're just going to use lungs. Okay. All right, let's move on here. So lastly, we have to talk about, so those were capillaries. We also have to, just going to clear my screen here. We also have to look at some specific blood vessels. So it is in the curriculum that we learn about some major and minor arteries and major and minor veins, okay? So I tried to highlight some that you might have been familiar with before. but these are some we need to know. Okay, so these are the fair game ones. So arterial system, that's our system of arteries in the body. So in the systemic system, arteries carry oxygenated blood. In the pulmonary system, they carry deoxygenated blood. So you have to know that. So major artery that we absolutely need to know, pulmonary artery, or sorry, the aorta, which is one that we've talked about already today, receives oxygenated blood from the left ventricle. Pulmonary arteries receive deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle. All right, so we already know that, but these fit in with those major arteries that you guys need to know. Okay, so some less major arteries. So we're going to do a couple in the upper body and a couple in the lower body. So on the left side of your image here, we just have all the arteries you need to know, okay, that I've chosen for us to know. And then on the right side, because I wanted to have my images a little bit bigger, we're going to highlight some. All right, so what we have here, the biggest is the aorta, right? So we see the aorta here, and this is the descending aorta, and we see lots of branches off of that, and we're not going to memorize all of those different arteries. Okay, if we had to memorize every artery in the body, that would be way too much. So we're just going to pick a few, but this highlights where the aorta is. Okay, all right. The carotid artery. So the carotid artery, we have it on either side. So this is highlighting here on the right side, but there's a carotid artery over here on the left side as well. So when we're feeling our pulse in our neck, we're feeling the pulse in the carotid artery. So we see how this branches right from the aorta, which is here, and that's up here in our neck. Okay. All right. Next, we have the brachial artery. Okay, so that's here. So that artery is coming down. And the brachial artery, that's the artery that we're using to take blood pressure. And we'll talk about blood pressure in a few lessons, but that's the artery that we're sort of pinching off when we put that blood pressure cuff on. Okay, next is the radial artery. So the radial artery is an artery and it kind of just goes up by where our thumb is. So it's on this side, right? Where our thumb is. So that's the radial artery. So that's a branch off of the brachial artery. So when we're feeling our pulse here in our hand, we're feeling for the radial artery. So we're feeling the pulse in our radial artery, right? Because our arteries are always having the blood pumps, or the heart pumps. And every time that heart pumps, we have this sort of expansion of the blood vessel, and that's what we feel as our pulse. Okay, so those are 4 arteries you need to know. Now the aorta is already one that's familiar to you. So let's move on. So now we're looking at the bottom part of the body. And on the bottom part of the body, we have the femoral artery. So the femoral artery, that runs by our femur, which is the bone in this upper part of our leg. Okay. So if we suffered an injury that broke that femur, that bone, that could splinter and then hit the femoral artery. And that's high pressure blood, so that could cause someone a severe amount of blood loss to the point of death. So it's very, very important when we're doing any kind of treatment of breaks in that area of the body to be quite careful. And then we have the iliac artery. And that's one that's, it feeds into the femoral artery, but that gives blood to all of our pelvic areas, right? So the pelvic region of our body. All right, so we're just going to look at a couple notes on this. So the carotid artery supplies blood to the head and the neck. Brachial to the arm. Radial, it supplies blood to the arm and the hand, but it's a branch off of the brachial artery. Okay. The iliac artery, blood to the pelvic organs. And the femoral artery supplies blood to the thigh, and then it's going to branch off to the lower parts of the body. Okay. So those are the arteries that you're responsible for knowing. So you need to know where they are in the diagram. Any questions on that, the arteries you need to know? Okay. So not seeing any questions. I'm going to move on here. So now we have veins. So the venous system of the body is all about our veins. Okay, so the system of veins in the body. So we need, again, in the curriculum, the major veins and then some minor veins that you need to know. So the systemic circuit veins carry deoxygenated blood, right? And then in the pulmonary circuit, the veins carry oxygenated blood. All right, and you should already know that. So our largest veins, well, the biggest vein in our body is the vena cava. So vena cava just means I'm talking about the superior and inferior, so that's just a plural form. It returns deoxygenated to the blood to the right atrium. The superior vena cava carries blood from the upper part of the body. The inferior vena cava carries blood from the lower part of the body. Okay, so we already know about the vena cava, so that's not new to you. Pulmonary veins, so they return oxygenated blood to the left atrium. So that material exchange happened at the lungs, the blood collected oxygen, and then that oxygenated blood is going to make its way to the left atrium via the pulmonary veins. So those ones aren't new to you either. But we have a couple of veins that we're going to talk about that will be new to you. So here, with this diagram, we're actually seeing veins and vessels, but I've only put arrows here where the veins are that we're going to talk about. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different veins. So the first one, superior vena cava. You know that one already, so that's a nice thick one that's carrying the blood to the right atrium from the upper part of the body. And we have the inferior vena cava, which is carrying that deoxygenated blood back to the heart from the lower part of the body. Okay, so those two you already know. Okay, the next one we see here is the jugular vein. Okay, so this is carrying deoxygenated blood from the head and neck. And then that's going to come and join up with this vein, which is going to eventually merge into the superior vena cava, carrying that blood back to the heart. Okay, so the jugular vein runs kind of right beside where our carotid artery is. Okay. Next we have the subclavian vein. So the subclavian vein is collecting blood from our arms, and that's going to return back. So we see how the jugular vein moves it, the subclavian vein, and they kind of merge together, and eventually they're going to become part of the superior vena cava. Okay. Next, we have the iliac vein. So the iliac vein, again, that's deoxygenated blood from the pelvic area, is going to return back to the inferior vena cava. And then last, I have labeled here the femoral vein. Okay. And the femoral vein is collecting the blood from the legs. Okay. All right. So the veins that empty into the superior vena cava, so the top part of the body, would be the jugular vein. So that's found in the neck, where the blood drains from the head and neck. And then the subclavian vein that drains blood from the upper extremities, right? So anything that's been deoxygenated coming back is going to go into the subclavian vein, which I'm going to find right here. Okay. All right. Inferior vena cava, so the iliac vein, lower part near the groin, and then the femoral vein drains blood into the lower extremities. Okay. All right. What I have here is some YouTube videos. So it didn't work so well with me trying to watch these with you. So I'm going to have you watch these on your own. So blood traveling through vessels, we'll see with that one. And this is different blood vessels of the body, and then just a crash course. It's about 10 minutes long. So I would recommend watching those. Your quiz today, I will make sure it's open. I didn't check earlier today, so I'll do that as soon as we sign off here. So your quiz is open until 8:30 on Wednesday morning. That is just on the heart booklet. So that's not on this booklet at all. It's just the heart booklet. So you're going to want to make sure you have your notes in front of you, your heart booklet in front of you, and your worksheets in front of you when you do that to get the best possible mark. Okay? So before I sign off, any questions from you guys? All right. If you have any questions, later. Remember, I have my office hours from 10 to 12 every day of the week. So you can certainly join me then, or just send me an email. Okay. So take care, you guys. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. Don't forget to do your quiz. Bye-bye.